Hello and welcome to The Curator on Monocle Radio with me, Chris Chermak. Over the next 60 minutes, we'll bring you some of the very best interviews and reports from the past week of coverage here on Monocle Radio. We've got highlights from our studios here at Midori House and from around the world. This week,
when they stopped the subsidy for battery electric vehicles, the battery electric vehicle market came to a screaming halt.
How to make electric vehicles more affordable. We'll be discussing that with Skoda CEO Klaus Zellmer. And we'll hear from the Thai musician Notep.
You're trusting the moment, trusting your skill set, your body, your vocal to do its job. And with that trust, the magic comes out.
All that and much, much more over the next hour here on The Curator with me, Chris Chermak. Welcome to this week's edition of The Curator. We'll begin this week's show with Andrew Muller's weekly musings. Here is what we learned.
We learned this week more of the strange, inadvertent genius of US President Donald Trump for confecting accidental metaphors for his own administration.
The reflecting pool has turned into a hotbed of activity. We have crews behind me that are using vacuums to suction up the algae that has accumulated and turned the reflecting pool from the blue, clear water to now a very murky green.
We learned, yes, that the man who got elected promising to drain the swamp has instead installed one, where the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool used to be. We learned that the $14.2 million of taxpayers' money that Trump had spent on painting the pool dark blue, awarded, incidentally, in a no-bid contract to a company which had previously worked on the president's golf courses, but there is almost certainly nothing whatsoever suspicious about that, had precisely the opposite effect upon algae to that which Trump might have hoped for, prompting drastic action.
We also saw crews earlier today dumping in gallon after gallon of hydrogen peroxide into the water.
Not the first time Donald Trump has attempted to remedy an awkward cosmetic issue with hydrogen peroxide, am I right? It's a joke about his hair, and an extremely good one. Tough crowd. We learned, relatedly, that presidential birthday celebrations might have come down a notch or two in the style, grace and general pizzazz departments across the last half dozen decades or so from this.
Happy birthday, Mr. President. Happy birthday to you.
To this.
And lastly, Michelle Obama is a man. Am I right, America?
We learned, yes, that President Trump's insistence on spending his 80th birthday watching sweaty men wrestling in a cage beneath a stars and stripes spangled contraption towering over what used to be the south lawn of the White House had proved every bit as stately and dignified as might have been predicted.
The fights took place in an 8-sided cage beneath a massive canopy known as the Claw.
Verily, it was like that time Franklin Roosevelt held a monster truck's tug-of-war in the Rose Garden, or Dwight Eisenhower installed a mechanical bull in the Lincoln bedroom. But we learned just how important a moment in the history of the Republic staging an ultimate fighting championship fixture in the White House grounds had been, and we learned this from Marco Rubio, a man whose long ago expressed wish of one day becoming US Secretary of State clearly caused a monkey's paw to twitch somewhere.
When President Kennedy announced that we were going to put a man on the moon and return him safely to the earth, no one thought that was possible, and we did it. We are a nation founded on doing what no one else dared to do and no one else aspired to do. And at some level, that's what this whole company, what UFC has been.
One giant leap from the top rope for mankind. Is that anything? But we learned that even while enjoying all of the above, there were also fireworks and a flypast, though no word as yet as to whether birthday party guests were given a little slice of cake to take home in a bag. The president had also found time to deliver, in the war in the Persian Gulf, the result he had long promised. Abject capitulation, utter humiliation, a generational reduction in strength and credibility. And remember, he never said whose. How weird does it sound if we play the Marine Corps March backwards to cleverly signify shambolic retreat? Yeah, that's just a din. Stick with what we had. We learned anyway that after nearly 4 months of war, hundreds of American casualties, thousands of Iranian casualties, an expenditure of tens of billions of American taxpayers' dollars, barely countable damage to the global economy, and, we do not for 1 second doubt, an amount of careful strategizing and mature reflection, the president had decided that, you know what, it's not really that big a deal if Iran has ballistic missiles after all. Everyone else has. Who cares?
I said, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to let Saudi Arabia have missiles, but they can't have them? Yes, sir. Doesn't work that way, you know?
And we learned that a bit of enriched uranium isn't really a thing between friends anyway.
It is a little hard, though, when you say that somebody wants it, other people have it, other adjoining states have it, and you're not letting them have it for purposes of electricity and things like that. It's always a little tough. You have to use a little common sense.
And it's probably not worth the hassle of going and getting it.
You could make the case, why are you even bothering? Because it's not really valuable. It's probably $500,000 worth. It's not very valuable stuff.
And that, at any rate, we learned the people running Iran, whoever indeed they at this point even are not such bad guys once you get to know them.
We're dealing with people that I think are very rational people, and they were nice to deal with. They were strong people, smart people.
Even if they are, we learned, a little bit backward.
Frankly, they have, in one way, a primitive culture.
Like they probably celebrate their leader's birthday by encouraging muscle-bound oafs to punch each other unconscious in some sort of Mad Max bouncy castle or something. But we learned that even while playing, and obviously very much not in any way losing this complicated game of six-dimensional geostrategic chess, the president had not lost sight of what really matters.
About Greenland, sir?
About who?
Greenland? Did you talk about Greenland?
No, we didn't discuss Greenland.
Not at all?
I should discuss Greenland.
Aside from anything else, round about now, what with one thing and another, Greenland would probably fancy its chances. For Monocle Radio, I'm Andrew Muller.
Thank you very much, Andrew. This is The Curator. Well, next here on The Curator, we turn to a highlight from this week's edition of The Urbanist, where the team checked in with Monocle's Toronto correspondent to take the temperature of the city after they hosted Canada's opening game of this year's FIFA Men's World Cup last week. Thomas Lewis reports.
It doesn't get better than this. We have a lot of excited Canadian fans.
I got goosebumps. We've been waiting for this for so long.
Most of my friends don't follow the team. They kind of laugh at us. They rather support England and all that. I said I'd rather die than wear somebody else's jersey, but that's me.
We've been waiting 23 years of our lives to see this and be here, and this is amazing.
Well, it definitely feels pretty magic so far. I've spoken to friends who live in different bits of the city. Toronto has quite a big footprint along the shore of Lake Ontario, and wherever you are, it seems, the answer is the same, that there really is this pretty beguiling, festive spirit that has seeped into lots of different bits of the city after a build-up that really was quite subdued. I think things like wrangles over ticket prices or some of the demands that FIFA was making of some of Canada's two host cities, and also the way that the build-up had played out south of the border in the US. I think that had sapped people's excitement a little bit. But now that the games have begun and that Canadians have seen the Canadian team play their first match in Toronto, that's all ebbed away, and people are kind of thrilled, it feels to me, that the world has rolled into town for the World Cup this time around. It's been lovely to see different bits of the city activated in different ways, in formal ones and in less formal ways too. Toronto's public library network, for example, which is one of the best used city library networks anywhere in North America, they're offering free screenings of all of Canada's games throughout this World Cup. Also at Nathan Phillips Square, which is the main plaza in front of Toronto's famous City Hall building, those curving mid-century towers, well, that's been transformed into a football pitch throughout the duration of the the tournament, and the University of Toronto, its lovely picturesque main quadrangle, that's been transformed into a public screening space as well. And there was a really lovely moment a couple of nights ago when the Toronto Symphony Orchestra was playing a concert in one of the concert halls in Toronto, but that was being live streamed onto the screens in Sankofa Square, which is often described as Toronto's answer to Times Square in New York. So you had this remarkable sight of lots of people dressed in Canada red watching one of Canada's best orchestras serenading them from a concert hall elsewhere in the city. So it's all felt pretty special so far. And I think it's fair to say there is a romance in Toronto for the World Cup. A deeper sort of emotional relationship that predates its hosting of World Cup games this time around, because more than half the population in Toronto was born somewhere else. So whenever a World Cup rolls around, someone will be cheering for some team somewhere in the city, no matter who's playing. So it does feel pretty special the World Cup is actually here. Oh, and an honourable mention to Alanis Morissette, who was an inspired choice to sing the national anthem ahead of Canada's first game here in Toronto of this World Cup. She did a fantastic job, did herself proud, did the country proud. Really was magic.
Thomas Lewis with that report from the World Cup hosting city of Toronto. You're listening to The Curator on Monocle Radio with me, Chris Chermak. On last weekend's edition of Meet the Writers, Georgina Godwin met the winners of the 2026 Women's Prize for Fiction and Non-Fiction. Established in 1996, the prize supports and awards literature written by women released over the past year. This year, the awards went to two debut authors, Virginia Evans for The Correspondent and Lyse Doucet for The Finest Hotel in Kabul. As the BBC's chief international correspondent and senior presenter, Doucet has covered many conflicts globally, especially in Afghanistan. She drew on her time in the infamous Intercontinental Hotel for her debut novel. Doucet writes in detail about the staff of the Intercontinental and how they've prevailed throughout Afghanistan's turbulent history, from former US President Joe Biden's withdrawal of assistance to the Taliban regaining control. Georgina was joined by Lyse following the winner's ceremony to discuss her debut novel.
When I first went back to the hotel, and of course some of the people I'd known for decades because of having stayed there and having kept going back to the hotel at times of great history, and history kept happening in Afghanistan and in Kabul. And so I went and had to sort of ask their permission. And the oldest character in the book, Hazrat, who's 70-something, couldn't believe his good fortune, because for him, he was the one who had been trained by the proper Intercontinental, and he would tell anyone who listened, even if he didn't want to listen, that he was a real intercontinental person. And in our first meeting, he actually mimicked. He remembered to me, told me the story about how the rich tourists in their white shirts and skirts would nonchalantly throw this towel, white, soft, plush, the kind of towels Monocle Radio staying at the front. See, even Stephanie, the producer, is laughing now. Towels, they define the hotel. Because for him, the towels represented, it oozed luxury, sophistication. It wasn't his world. But he became first a waiter, and then he became a housekeeper. And he remembered that world, and he missed that world, and he still drew authority and pride and honor from, and the others as well. And I was so stunned. This was a time when I started doing my research where Kabul was awash with money, corruption, luxury, bulletproof SUVs, sedans going through the streets of Kabul, money, however you could get it. And here are these people working at the hotel. They had began at the hotel decades earlier as teenagers, cycling up the pine-covered hill to work and cycling back down the pine-covered hill to home. They were still driving their bicycles. And I thought, Wow. And I can still have that feeling when I'm standing in the hotel and I thought, I want people to know about you. I want people to see all of, and I thought at that time, will I find the words to convey your bearing, your dignity, your dedication to your work? And they would say to me with such conviction, Lyse, this is the most beautiful hotel in the world. Now, never mind, they'd never been in any other hotel in the world, but they loved it. And I would say to my Afghan colleague, and I must emphasize that for me, this journey was all about also working with an Afghan colleague, Mahfouz Zubaydi, who started out when we met, was a shoeshine boy in Kabul, and now he's the BBC's senior Afghan producer. There you get a story about the great American historian of Afghanistan, Lyse Doucet, sociologist, described Afghans as maximizers, grabbing opportunities with both hands. And I'd say, Mahfouz, they keep saying that this hotel is like their own home. Do you think they're saying that to make me feel? Because they know I'm writing this book. He goes, no, Lyse, they really feel, I talked to him about Mislihana, just like our own home. And so I was also touched by how they felt about this hotel. And don't you love hotels? Come on, Georgina. We've seen each other in a few hotels. We had a few hotels in our time. They just have there's this mystery about the hotels. And what I also really love is these rituals and routines, the minutiae of life, about a steaming cup of tea with cardamom, the luscious pieces of cake. All these little deep routines and rituals, habits and days go on in the midst of these great sweeping moments of history, in the moments of danger, literally knocking on the door. And yet they just waiters keep waiting, bellboys keep lugging luggage up and down the stairs, housekeepers still keep snapping sheets across the bed. And it is that everydayness in the midst of extraordinary, not everyday. I love that as well. Yeah. I love that as well. In the same way that August the 15th to 21, in the hotel, the headline was not that the Taliban had come to Kabul. It was, Lyse, the bride, she didn't change from her green dress to her white dress. The Taliban came to the hotel. They didn't eat the food. Can you believe that? They didn't eat the food. Because if you're in a hotel, what's the headline? That the wedding at lunchtime was shattered. They didn't eat the food.
So you sat down to write this, and as you said, you had no idea whether you could.
Yeah.
Now you have. It's won this extraordinary prize.
Yeah, special, yes.
How does this change how you think about the future?
We say in journalism, you're only as good as your next story. That I've managed to, Georgina, I still walk down the street and think, did I finish that book? Is there something? I literally do. Like, it's a miracle. I don't know how I did it because there was so little time and so many major world events. And while I can sometimes miss small stories, I can't miss the big ones. And they have been earth-shaking stories ever since I signed this book contract. But of course, every new book is a new challenge. First of all, to find, again, a story to tell that I have the authority and the interest and the ability to write it, people to share their stories. And again, the most important thing right now is, what is the conceit? What is the prism? How can I tell a story which will draw people in rather than turning them away? They have to, as Margaret Atwood says, will they keep reading beyond 5 pages? You have to keep turning the pages to get to the end of the book. And I need to find the time as well. I said to my editor, Rowan, I said, if the book had been published this year, it would have been a very different kind of promotion, because my life has been a blur with the war against Iran, with Israel and the United States, Strait of Hormuz. It's just been unrelenting. I just had God created this little window for me to do my day job and to do the book, to finish the book and promote the book last year. So I do think about the next one, but it will be the same kind of, the doubts don't go away. You still have to, it's up to the readers, isn't it? Which is why in my speech I said, in order for there to be writers, there have to be readers. You need both of them. And that's the beauty. The book will only really come to life and be loved, will be read, if there's both writers and readers.
That was the journalist and author Lyse Doucet speaking with Georgina Godwin for last weekend's edition of Meet the Writers. Next, we'll turn to Tall Stories, where this week Tom Webb took us to the Chinese city named after the fictional 1933 literary paradise of Shangri-La to sort fact from fiction.
On an ancient tea trading route connecting China and Tibet, you may discover Shangri-La. Formerly called Zhongdian almost 25 years ago, the Chinese government changed its name to the fictitious Tibetan town from James Hilton's 1933 utopian novel Lost Horizon. Though this was a move largely to promote tourism in the region, with its dramatic landscapes, monasteries and culture, many would certainly label it a paradise. Indeed, to this day, its monastery is its biggest draw, an important pilgrimage site and home to more than 700 monks. Sung Zanlin Monastery, often called Little Potala Palace, it is the largest Tibetan Buddhist monastery in Yunnan, first built in 1679. At the foot of its 150 stairs from the main entrance area up to the main assembly hall, I met Shangri-La local and hotel group Songsam's tour guide Kieran. At an altitude of 3,400 meters, we took things slowly.
This monastery, it is a center of the Tibetan Buddhism, and it is the biggest monastery in the Yunnan province. There is someone who called this monastery as a small Potala palace in Tibet. So it looks like Potala. This monastery, it's been like 300 years, and he faced the cultural revolutions and the issues during have been in these areas. So it also united the minorities around this monastery. The monks, the gurus, they got the really high power to deal with the problems. They used to set their government in the monastery. And in the history, they help lots of people, the poor people, the rich people, and they look the people equally and to help them.
Inside, 108 columns support gilded ceilings, magnificent frescoes depict Buddhist legends, and exquisite golden Buddha sculptures line the halls. The air is filled with the scent of incense and the sound of prayer, adding to its already mythical setting. For pilgrims wanting a taste of luxury in the mountains, there is only one place to stay. With no televisions, limited Wi-Fi and ultra-remote locations, Songsam hotels are sanctuaries offering luxury through giving guests less but time to switch off. In Shangri-La stands the very first Songsam property in a traditional Tibetan farming village. The building uses traditional Tibetan construction methods, including thick stone and earth walls and intricate mortise and tenon wood joinery without nails. Interiors feature authentic tanka paintings, handcrafted carpets, antique Tibetan furniture, and copperwork, all sourced locally. It's where I caught up with Solomon Mahan, Group Vice President of Songsam.
Our group, we started 24 years ago, so we developed everything for 24 years. So we adapt all the international standards, including the architecture and the interior design and what we use, what we eat. But how we keep the way we are, because we use local people. 95% of our staff are local. We have 1,600 staffs together, and 95% of them are local. So if you have all the local people surrounding work for you, then you kept everything the same. We have 18 different lodges along the Himalayas. So people come from all over the world, come to join the Himalaya to see the snow mountains, to go into the monastery with the monks, to experience the culture. It's preserved for years, maybe for decades, for 100 years. So that's the reason it's kept the same way when people doing the whole day. For example, now is the winter time. Winter time to me is the perfect timing to go to Tibet or the Tibetan region. Now, because everybody, the nomad people come down from the mountains because of the weather, and the agriculture is stopped, everything, because it's covered by snow. So people have nothing to do but weddings and festivals. Now China opened the visa-free issue for I think whole Europe. And after pandemic and people starting to travel, so this is a good thing for us. And we want more international travelers to come to Tibet to see. And now you have better standards of the lodging and the food quality is good. And we have Tibetan people who speak English speaking guide to welcome you guys.
More than just a place to stay, the mountain hotels act as bases for immersion in the Tibetan cultural regions of Western China, with some guests staying over a month at a time to paint, walk and participate in guided wellness experiences. Whatever you consider to be your Shangri-La, you can almost certainly discover a version of it here.
Tom Webb with that report. And still to come here on The Curator, Klaus Zellmer, CEO of Skoda, discusses the challenges to develop an electric car for a brand that prides itself on affordability. We'll also stop off in Switzerland for Art Basel, and we'll meet the Thai musician, producer and environmentalist Notep. Stay tuned.
Craft matters. In small ways, like how a coffee is brewed. And in not so small ways, like how your money is cared for, which is why for 160 years, UBS has elevated banking to a craft, tailoring unique strategies that combine human expertise with the latest technologies, all happening across 24 time zones and 12 key financial hubs, with you at the heart of it all. UBS, banking is our craft.
You're with The Curator, our weekly highlights show here on Monocle Radio. I'm Chris Chermak. Electric cars were supposed to be the savior of our climate, but getting them introduced on our roads and taken up by consumers has proved more of a challenge than many policymakers will have been hoping. That's partly down to cost, as European car makers especially have struggled to bring down prices, while China, which is producing cheap cars by the dozens, faces high tariffs to protect home markets in the Western world from losing out. Well, for Monday's edition of The Briefing, I met with Klaus Zellmer, CEO of Skoda. He's fresh off winning an Autocar Leader of the Year award, and he's also been quite outspoken about electric cars. In this highlight, we discussed how challenging it is to develop an electric car for a brand like Skoda that prides itself on affordability.
Very challenging. But it's not the technology itself. I think, in terms of battery, drivetrains, technology, yes, we had to catch up with software, but I think we're on a very solid path now with our software in the cars. I think the biggest challenge is really managing the transition between different drivetrains. And a couple of years ago, a typical automotive manager would claim that, within the next couple of years, everything will be electric. Now, that has not happened, as we all know. I think the speed of transformation is not what we presumed it would be 5 years ago. In other words, at the end of the day, it's individual consumers making individual decisions based on their usage profiles, their habits, their sentiment, their psychological barriers, talking about range anxiety, and so on and so forth. So the transformation between different drivetrain technologies is a bigger challenge than just building a battery electric vehicle because, for example, with Skoda, we now have the biggest portfolio we have ever had with mild hybrid options, with a hybrid option, with a plug-in hybrid option, and with a battery electric vehicle option, plus all-wheel drive, diesel engines. So it's a hugely complex portfolio that you have to have in the market in order to serve consumers' individual preferences. And this is what Skoda has decided to do 4 or 5 years ago, that we want to have a wide footprint, a wide portfolio in order to capture a big audience. And as I said initially, coming from being number 10 4 years ago to now being number 2 shows that this portfolio and the bandwidth of the portfolio is the prerequisite in order to really capture a big target audience in Europe.
To what extent does government support come into that for you as the head of a private car company, obviously, but within this transition, there needs to be a certain amount, perhaps, of government support? We're seeing in Germany, there has been once reintroduced again this year, a certain amount of subsidies for electric cars. How important is that to help with this transition?
Any government support, of course, is useful in order to drive into the right direction, possibly accelerating, if it's applied and rolled out consistently and sustainably. And you just mentioned Germany. When they stopped the subsidy for battery electric vehicles, the battery electric vehicle market came to a screaming halt. Overnight, basically, which was a massive problem for everybody who had a stake in the business. Whether it's charging infrastructure companies, electricity companies, suppliers, or car manufacturers. These sort of distortions are more harmful than the benefit of subsidies or help from the government. The general help from the government is to establish an infrastructure that takes away range anxiety from users of battery electric vehicles, and an electricity price that is stable and low. This is the main request that I would have as a CEO of a car manufacturer here in Europe, and that, of course, rolled out consistently, sustainably across Europe. Because the other distorting fact is that we have penalties if you miss your CO2 target, pan-European, but there's no pan-European plan for anything supporting that, be it subsidies or infrastructure or electricity price. However, if you happen to take the prerequisites to sell battery electric vehicles in Norway, you will find out that it's possible to get to 100%, but we know how it is possible. The energy price is much lower. The charging infrastructure is one of the most dense one in Europe. And if you happen to buy a battery electric vehicle, you don't pay VAT, which takes away 21% of the original price. If you then register that car versus an ICE car, you pay 10 times as much registration tax for an ICE car. And then you take another car further down south, another country. There's practically no support for anything. This is a free choice, free flow market where consumer sentiment will then gravitate towards conventional technologies. And I can talk about our home country, the Czech Republic, we're still below 5% battery electric vehicles. So you have these extremes, and you're coming back to your question. In one country, you have the full Monty, and the battery electric vehicles are where they are in Norway. And then you have other countries, such as the Czech Republic or Italy, as an example, and other cars further east from that, where the pickup of battery electric vehicle sales is not as strong as we need it in order to be CO2 compliant. But that said, with Skoda, we now have the Elroq being a very successful player in the market. The Enyaq, already established player. We have just introduced the Epic, which is the most affordable one in our lineup of battery electric vehicles. And we're going to bring the Peak, which is a 7-seater SUV battery electric vehicle that we will introduce next month. So this gives us confidence. And of course, CO2 compliance is not to put a question mark behind. This is a given. And we will do everything to comply. And at the moment, with the sales rate of our BEVs, we can be optimistic.
I did want to ask you also about China, if I could, because this is something you've commented on before as well, and I think it's interesting that you have said that there needs to be, yes, maybe a level playing field, but also you need European car makers to be able to stand on their own 2 feet. So what is your view of tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles coming into Europe at this point? Is it helpful, or does it create a bit of complacency?
No, it creates a little pause. And nothing more than that. Because what Chinese companies then do is invest into Europe, which might be part of the master plan. But if you look at Europe and you put some pins into Europe where Chinese manufacturers have either already started building cars or have published to invest into production plants, they're coming. So if the tariffs did anything, they gave us a little break. That's no reason to be complacent about anything. We have to do our homework. This is a competitive industry, and it's always been. You know, Skoda, 130 years. For 130 years, it was very competitive. And I think we're in a strong position because it's more than a car. It's also everything around the car. It's the whole value chain down to your moment of truth when you buy a car, when you get it serviced with a dealer network that is of help, that Skoda is proud to say there's a human touch in our ownership experience with Skoda vehicles, which is really important, sets us apart from other manufacturers. And as I said before, being number 2 in Europe is nothing to get complacent about. If anything, it's something where you have to say, I want to defend my title. I want to stay amongst the top 3 with all the competitors coming into Europe, then without any tariffs, because they will produce their cars in Europe.
That was Klaus Zellmer, CEO of Czech car maker Skoda, speaking to me earlier this week. Well, next we head to one northern Swiss city, which has long been a magnet for curators, collectors, creatives, and the curious. Art Basel, which first opened its doors in 1970, was this year showcasing over 200 prominent galleries and over 4,000 artists from across the world. The fair officially began on Thursday, but ahead of the VIP days, Emma Nelson spoke to the CEO of Art Basel, Noah Horowitz, about what to expect from this year's fair, the highlights and his favorites. She began by asking him what visitors could expect from the 56th edition of the fair.
It's the biggest fair we run, over 43 countries represented. We're really excited this year. There's a lot of new things. We've introduced an initiative called Basel Exclusive, in which we're asking galleries, and over 80% of the galleries in the fair have agreed to participate, to hold back work from their previews that they send out now in advance of the fair, to only present them for the first time on site at the fair, sort of going back more an old school return to the way fairs used to be run pre-digitization. So that's a really exciting new initiative. Unlimited should be great this year, our sector for large-scale sculpture. We're thrilled to welcome Ruba Katrib, who's chief curator at MoMA PS1. It's her first Unlimited with us. Steffi Hessler, who's the director of the Swiss Institute, also has a great show on here in Zurich, is curating parkour, which is our sector on Klarstrasse and the public domain, over 20 different projects under her remit. And then we also introduced an initiative called 010 this year, which we launched in Miami Beach in December and is co-curated by Eli Scheinman and a fantastic artist, Trevor Peglin, and presents 16 artists that really come through the world of digital and tech-based work, as well as others from the core art world that are influenced by digital means and ideas. And so that's a totally new thing. So you'll see the classics ever again in Basel, but a lot of new material as well, which we're excited about.
It sounds like you've had to think very, very hard about what you do this year, because all the reports are suggesting that the art world is incredibly high octane at the moment and that the market is very demanding.
The market is demanding. Market's changing. There's a huge upward trajectory for, the last 25 years in the market. Coming out of COVID, it spiked even further, and then the market softened. So I think the entire industry has had to think, rethink, and fine-tune their programming, their platforms, and Art Basel is part of that. At the same time, we've expanded, adding Paris a number of years ago. We expanded into Doha in February this year, and now we come back to our flagship show here in Basel, started in 1970, so this is year 56, and continue to refine the platform. And Basel, as ever, is really the market maker of them all in our industry, but we take nothing for granted, and so we work hand in hand with our clients year-round, supporting them in what they do. They're, more than any other fair they participate in, they dial up work for this show in terms of consignments in the secondary market that they sort of sock away and bring out in June with us, to really ambitious commissions and projects from some younger artists from all over the world. So we're excited. The market, had some good tailwinds in the May auctions in New York, and we hope to trade off of that this week.
And people are saying that the art market is getting increasingly fragmented, but if you have the right material in the right place at the right time, the possibilities are endless. How do you make sure that Art Basel gets the most exceptional art?
Well, we deliver clients, we deliver the moment, right? So we're incredibly intentional about our selection processes with our various committees, the curators that we appoint, the programs we put in place. And, again, we take nothing for granted. It's sort of step-by-step process. But our clients, the galleries, put a huge amount of trust in us, and we continue to deliver. But it's a challenging market. It's more of a K-shaped market now, coming out of the downturn. So that the top end of the market has increased again, which is promising. There's continued volume and activity at the lower end. The middle market is going through some growing pains. So, our focus with our clients is really to support them as best we can, to leverage our digital, our content channels, our VIP teams to create connectivity. We continue to see huge new audiences coming across the fair. I'm here in Zurich with brilliant gallery weekend. Large number of clients from Asia, which we've seen, over the last few years. And so as the art world globalizes, as our platform expands, we're, continuing to welcome new audiences from Asia, from throughout Europe, younger generations, and increasingly now also with our presence in Doha in the Middle East too.
Final question to you now. I'm going to ask you to commit a crime, figuratively speaking. So I've got my eye on the Gerhard Richter, the abstractist built, which is on the Hauser and Wirth stall. I want that one. What are you stealing when everyone else has gone home?
What am I stealing?
Yes.
I steal Mondrian's in my dreams. I steal Malevich's, and I'll take a Richter too if you want to split that one with me.
Okay, we'll cut it in half. That one that will do it no damage.
It would be the Richter Banksy. It would be worth even more on the other side of it.
That was Noah Horowitz of Art Basel speaking to Emma Nelson. And for more on Art Basel, for Friday's edition of The Globalist, Georgina Godwin caught up with Monocle's Associate Editor for Culture, Sophie Monaghan-Coombs, fresh back from Basel. Georgina began by asking Sophie what the mood on the ground has been like throughout the week.
It was really busy and it actually felt very positive, much more so than I was expecting. There were a few new aspects to the fair that have debuted for the first time in Basel. So one of them is this Basel exclusive, which is all about keeping one artwork out of your communications before the fair so that there's an element of surprise. People see it for the first time in person. And I think that was, one of the gallerists described it to me like a treasure hunt that had been introduced for those special artworks. And also 010, this new sector dedicated to digital artworks. I spoke to a couple of the gallerists there and they seemed really positive about their presence and also their sales, which was maybe a little bit surprising. And then yesterday, just before I left, I actually saw one of their artist conversations, which is a series which is running throughout the week of half-an-hour conversations with artists. And I saw Arthur Jaffa, who is one of my absolute favourite artists working today. And it was a completely rammed room. There were people standing around the back. There were people sat on the floor. So it was really busy and, it felt very buoyant.
What about the Volta Art Fair?
So Volta Art Fair happens around the corner. It's a little bit smaller and there it's a little bit kind of friendlier. The works are a lot cheaper. There's a whole move to keep plenty of works kind of under 5,000 Swiss francs. And I spoke to Lee Cavalieri about the kind of innovation there. So maybe we can hear a little bit of him.
There are people coming in here and really putting their life on the line for the work that they're showing, and they really believe in it. We've got, the Aboriginal Pavilion is groundbreaking. It's the first time anyone's done this outside of Australia. That's a risk, but they believe it. They really believe in it, and they know it, and they can sell it, and it's working. I think it stems from passion and understanding their artists and knowing what they want to do with them. And a lot of them are believing in some quite crazy stuff, which is great, and that's what we want. And I think it really enlivens the place to see that happening. And we've got an installation here, which there'll be performances, we have dance, we have a couple of really interesting installations, we've got some groundbreaking digital work. This is a sign that innovation is still alive and kicking.
That was Lee Cavalieri, who is the director of Volta Art Fair. And I think what he says there about, innovation, it is happening within Art Basel, in Basel itself. They're introducing these new things. But I think also you need to look around the city at Volta, at another satellite fair, Lister, or the Basel Social Club. There's so much happening. It's not just about what goes on in the Messeplatz.
And finally, just a quick look at some museum highlights.
Yes, of course, there are plenty of great museum shows which are timed to happen alongside Art Basel too, which I loved. Helen Frankenthaler, who has a show at the Kunstmuseum. So she was a real pioneer of abstract expressionism. And the show is, it's amazing. It's her first institutional solo show in Switzerland. It brings together some of her really big, colourful, riotous works and alongside works that she was inspired by. One thing that I really loved here was that they include some of her notebooks with her notes that she made when she was visiting museums, particularly in Europe. So she would say, she's kind of going through these works, ticking off the ones she's seen, and she'll say like nice and light, but really don't like it. And you get a real sense of her taste, and I really loved that. And then secondly, at the Fondation Weiler, there is a Pierre Huyghe show. He is a French artist. This one is very conceptual. It's incredibly sparse. These different rooms with some video works, some very strange sort of floating rocks. There is a mechanical worm on the floor that moves around. It is odd, and I happened to see it quite late at night, which was quite nice because it was very empty, and it really reminded me of the new Kane Parsons film Backrooms. So it's strange, but it's definitely one I'd recommend.
Yeah. And anything else people should definitely catch it up, Basil?
Yes, I mean, I think the unlimited sector is always something worth going to and spending some time there. This is basically just where the big works are. And so this year there are 59. There's a tiny little animatronic mouse by Ryan Gander that has had so much attention. There's also a wonderful series of photos by Peter Hoosier that I would definitely recommend.
That was Monocle's Associate Editor for Culture, Sophie Monaghan-Coombs, speaking to Georgina Godwin for Friday's edition of The Globalist. And finally on today's show, we turn to Wednesday's edition of The Briefing, where Nick Luscombe spoke with Notep, a Thai musician, producer and environmentalist whose music blends electronic sounds, ambient textures and traditional influences. She discussed her creative process and the role that nature and sustainability play in her work. Here's a highlight.
I'm Notep. I'm an artist, musician, and environmentalist based in Bangkok. But I love traveling, and I travel quite a lot for work.
You described your voice as being an instrument. Mm-hmm. Can you elaborate on that? How do you see it that way?
Yeah, as in like I don't want to put any limit to my vocal. I just want to, give it freedom and space to be anything it wants. And I'm a very spiritual person, so I love just channeling the moment and using my vocal to channel. Sometimes I don't even know what I'm going to sing and it just comes out. Sometimes maybe it's not even me, Yeah. And I think that's the magic. It's like jazz music, right? You're in the moment. You're trusting the moment, trusting your skill set, your body, your vocal to do its job. And with that trust, the magic comes out.
And with the visuals, how do you do that yourself? Do you put that together? Is it your concept?
So the concept is from me, with the help of Cyrus James Khan, my partner, and also an amazing digital artist. So he created all the visuals, and then I just pick them and like edit them into the songs that I want. So every time is all different because he just creates like a preset, not a preset, but like he creates video clips for me, and then with that I just edit them together into another clip, and I just place them with songs that I'm performing with.
What inspires the visuals, and how does that kind of connect with your overall sort of aesthetic?
The visual is very sci-fi, but also very nature inspired, and also inspired by cells. So my previous album is all about like metamorphogenesis, like metamorphosis, the birth of cell transforming into human body. So it's a lot about like that, and also taking inspiration from the ocean, a lot of deep sea creatures, because a song I recorded, sound of humpback whales. I went diving with them and I recorded that sound and I put it into the song. So there's also a visual of that whale with me as well.
So tell me about that. I mean, you say that so matter-of-factly, I went diving with whales and put that recording. So tell me about this side of what you do as well.
Yeah. So another passion of mine is diving. Every year I try to go to at least one place in the world that is very epic, that I will see something big. Or if they're small, they come in a big group. And then one time I went to Tonga and humpback whales were migrating there. So I got to free dive with them, all kinds, whether it's like mother and calves or just like a solo male. And they have amazing whale songs. And I just happened to be able to record that.
So how did you record that? What did you do?
At that moment, I didn't have any equipment with me apart from GoPro, but it was enough. So the sound that I got was from the GoPro, and I just kind of, mix them, edit them, EQ some stuff.
That's amazing. So how do you, I'm curious because, you work in electronic music, but also you have this organic thing as well. So you work with traditional kind of Thai performers. How do you kind of connect that all up?
I don't even think about that because I feel like everything needs balance. When it's too much electronic, for me, I don't feel as connected to it. And for my own practice, I love seeing other people do it. But when it's too traditional, I don't feel connected to it as well. So I kind of just pull in whatever I feel connected to and just, again, like trust the moment and just bring it together. And then as I, work on it and develop it, the shape is clearer and I understand what I'm doing.
Does your music have a sort of, is there a strong Thai element to it, do you think? Or do you feel it's much more sort of international?
It's a mix. Some songs has a lot of Thai elements, like Thai instruments, Thai samples, even some Thai chant. Some songs are just purely contemporary, like I wouldn't say international, but just contemporary, no label. I define myself as like ambient ethereal pop, sometimes experimental as well.
And is that always, I guess it's always expanding, right? That your concept of music, I guess, as your awareness of environmental issues expands because there's so much to uncover. Do you feel you're on this kind of journey? And if so, how far are you on it?
So with my journey with the environmental part, I feel like I'm really inspired by frequencies of trees, of other organisms that are here on the planet but doesn't have a voice to talk to us. And I feel like taking their frequencies as MIDI and then turning that into music is really cool because you can actually kind of feel what they're trying to communicate. I've been really enjoying that process.
So in a way, you're kind of like an ambassador. You're giving voice to nature. Is that how you see what you do as well?
Yeah, I try to give voice to nature, trying my best.
How do you see the sort of next chapter of Notep and Notep music? Yes. I have to find a whole genre now called Notep music. So yeah.
So my first album, Metamorphogenesis, was very there was everything, multi-genre. But I feel like my new EP, it's more refined. And I feel like I myself as well is more refined. I've come to realization that maybe I don't want to focus too much on dance music or upbeat music, but more on intentional, deep listening sounds, ambient texture, more natural sound that I get inspiration from. So yes, the new music is going to be heading that way, and I think it's going to keep going that way.
That was Thailand's Notep there, speaking with Nick Luscombe in Tokyo. Well, that's all the time we have for this week's edition of The Curator. The show was produced by Sam Impey and presented by me, Chris Chermak. Do join us again next week to hear some of the very best of the programs here on Monocle Radio. Thanks for listening.